Hi, and welcome to Micronaut Monday. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics. I Am Stan, a graphic biography of the legendary Stan Lee. And from Image Comics, Jack Kirby's Star Warriors, starring Adam Star and the Solar Legion. Today is the final order cutoff date for Jack Kirby's Star Warriors. Ask your local comics retailer to reserve a copy for you ASAP. So we've got the Micronauts number 7, guest starring the ManThing. Beautiful cover by Michael Golden, possibly the best one so far. It's very moody. I think that ManThing in general is just like a fun character to draw because you can just sort of go nuts with all the textures and shadows. You don't have to adhere to any kind of like strictures about proportions or anatomy. You have like the freedom to draw to your heart's content, and also like a very beautifully rendered snake, and just really nice. I like the core of darkness in this composition. That there's just this dark core at the center, and this is one of those sort of like reflective issues that you'd get from time to time in this era of superhero comics. And those are some of the best issues. It's a moment for the characters to reflect on everything they've experienced so far and kind of get their strength back, or, sometimes lost in the wilderness of indecision, depression, sadness. And so we get that here. And I think ManThing is the perfect thematic representation of that. And so they're fishing. Bug is sitting on the bobber, whatever they call that thing, which is a strange position for somebody who professes to hate water. Steve Coffin is depressed because, as far as he knows, his father just died when his father fell into the Prometheus pit. Nice angle here, nice drawing. They're at the Coffin Family shack that they go to, when they want to go boating and fishing and relax. It's kind of like their little vacation spot, but there's nothing happy going on right now. Staring into the abyss, thinking about his departed father and the abyss that he fell into. Microtron is watching Star Trek on TV with the Enterprise right next to the Endeavor, drawing parallels between the two series. Star Wars was very fresh and very of the moment, but for somebody like Bill Mantlo or Michael Golden, if you were, like in your 20s at this time, when you thought of sort of, space opera, lasers, fantasy and things, Star Wars was the new hotness, but most likely you would think of Star Trek and Captain Kirk. And Microtron gives a critique of this show, which he's enjoying quite a bit, which also sounds like an encapsulation of the Micronauts and a meta commentary. When Commander Ran told me to monitor this primitive Earth communicator to see whether any news of our escape from Cape Canaveral was being broadcast, I had no idea it would be as exciting. Why the fantasy elements are so subtly interwoven with reality that it is almost believable. And I think it's even commenting on this panel. You have, courtesy of Michael Golden, you have these very like sort of everyday objects, ordinary reality, drawn in a very convincing way with subtlety and attention to detail that tells a story with these sort of, sci-fi elements sort of woven in. You have a wooden, kind of rickety table with a can of soda and some, orange slices and an orange. Colored green, giving them the impression of being lime. An ordinary TV set of the day, not a state-of-the-art TV, the kind of TV you would have at your vacation spot, not the one you'd have in your home. And you have this robot from another dimension and the spaceship that he got there in. So yes, fantasy elements subtly interwoven with reality, making it almost believable. That's the statement of intent here. Inside the ship, Arctus Ran is writhing in his sleep. He's having nightmares. Mary wonders why he goes to sleep in this sarcophagus again and again. This sarcophagus, which is one of the Micronauts toys. Some of the Micronauts would come with this little sarcophagus, very often sort of having like an Egyptian theme applied to the design elements. This crypt. It's Commander Ran had been sleeping in that for 1,000 years, and so it got very comfortable to him. So even though it's not the most comfortable bed on the ship, it's the one he goes to sleep. It's just sort of habitual and comfortable for him. But Biotron had a psionic rapport with Arcturus Ran over these 1,000 years that they explored microspace, and so he knows Arcturus Ran better than anybody. And you can actually watch Arcturus Ran's dreams on this screen that sort of feeds to Biotron. And so Mary gets to watch his nightmares. And so again, we're looking back, we're talking about, a lost parent. And so we see Arcturus Ran saying goodbye to his departed parents, Dallin and Sepsis, as he's going to depart in the endeavor to go on his 1,000-year space journey. This is issue 7, and issue 7 of New Gods was a flashback story. And in this, we get that too. We get to see sort of the days before issue 1 of Micronauts. We get to see 1,000 years ago, Arcturus Ran leaving on his journey, seeing his parents in their full glory as rulers of Homeworld. And then there's Arcturus Ran's teacher, chief scientist Karza, sort of plotting and scheming to become Baron Karza, ruler of Homeworld, and betraying Dallin and Sepsis. Dallin and Sepsis, who have become religious figures to the modern day Micronauts, people like Mary and Bug and Acroyer, where to Arcturus Ran, they were just mom and dad. And so we get to see one of Arcturus Ran's space journeys, one of his little, sort of Star Trek missions where he brings this message of peace to the various planets of the microverse, and with Biotron as his representative, because he's in a cryogenic sleep, this whole time, and just communicating mentally via Biotron. So his body is inactive, but his mind is very active during this journey. And the way it's drawn here by Michael Golden, it's kind of like, the ghost, the soul of Arcturus Ran is kind of overseeing all this. But I was kind of thinking about, this origin story of the Micronauts, of Bill Mantlo playing with Micronauts toys with his son on Christmas morning. And I was thinking about Biotron, that like when you look at the Biotron toy, it's not so much shown in this drawing, but the Biotron toy has this sort of, clear kind of like glass coffin on his chest that you can put other Micronauts inside. And it looks almost like Snow White's glass coffin. And I thought maybe Bill Mantlo was sort of playing with that toy and got the idea of sort of like a Micronaut who's inside the chest of this robot in a cryogenic freeze, that little, cockpit was actually, like a glass coffin holding a cryogenically frozen Micronaut, and that it would be sort of in this state of sleep, mentally controlling the robot or mentally in contact with the robot. And I thought, maybe that's where Mantlo got the idea for the story beat of this sort of connection between Biotron and Arcturus Ran. And then when it came time to actually draw the comic, Michael Golden figured out a way to represent it that made sense to him, represent that idea. That's a theory I have. And so, they're talking more about this stuff. And then Biotron explains that their mission was kind of doomed from the start, because shortly after they'd left, 100 years or so into their 1,000-year journey, Homeworld had invented, warp drive, and so then they were able to cover vast distances in the blink of an eye, quicker than the old Endeavor. And so the Endeavor was sort of plodding its way through space and just being, passed up by everybody else. So the mission was, kind of pointless. But they did eventually make it to the space wall, and there they met the time travelers. They met the Enigma force embodied in the time traveler, this one being who is many. And so we get this, really nice panel here. Get this, encounter with the infinite, the source wall. Meeting the source. Eureka! I found it. Pete Rose batting practice, wearing his Phillies uniform. This is the Pete Rose I remember from childhood as a kid growing up in Philadelphia. And now a fish jumps up to get Bug. Bug, talks about how gross it is being in water. So why did you go down there in the first place? Obviously for, drama and comedy's sake. So finally they see what Microtron was monitoring the television for. They find news of HELL, the Human Engineering Life Laboratory. And so they find out it's been sealed off with a force field, and Steve's remembering the seeming death of his father, and it's making him very sad and making him very fearful, and that's attracting the attention of ManThing. So the Micronauts, they're trying to figure out what to do next. Steve's trying to figure out how to deal with his grief. And so it's a genre story. It's an action-adventure story. So how do we embody that within the action? We summon an avatar of sadness and fear and the inevitability of death. And now we cut back to the microverse. Lots of things. For a quiet issue, there's a lot happening here. We're back in microspace. Philip Prometheus is orbiting around Homeworld, and all of Karza's armies and scientists are studying him, seeing what's up, and they discover that he's got an envelope of atmosphere around him that allows him to breathe. Just basically, explaining why he can sort of float in space and be okay. Just a very minimal explanation. Look at this. Love these ads for Star Wars toys where, they're basically drawing the Star Wars character. Some of them look like toys. Some of them just look like the sort of comic book versions of the characters. Really, really fun snapshot of an era. And now Baron Karza is studying Philip Prometheus, and he sees that he is a combination of man and machine. Not too different from himself, not too different from the Micronaut world where it's, the conceit is that it's a world of part man, part machine creatures. So Baron Karza has an idea.
Prepare the subject for the mind merge.
And try to do a mind merge with Philip Prometheus, similar to, the plans that they had for Slug to do a mind merge with the Duchess Belladonna. And so Prince Argon and Slug make their way to the rebels. The rebels aren't sure what to make of them. Are they spies? Is this a trap? It's too good to be true. But one of the shadow priests is there and tells them to cool their jets. One of Karza's shadow priests? I do not serve Karza, Prince Argon, but Homeworld. Now hurry, Karza's dog soldiers search for you. You must be escorted to a place of safety. There you will be told all you need to know for the final battle. So, there's, within Karza's ranks, these shadow priests who we had assumed up to this point were just, completely subservient to Baron Karza. Turns out there's at least one among them who's ready to stand up to Baron Karza and be instrumental in this final battle against him. We cut to Ray Coffin, Steve's dad, who is alive and well, just lost in the microverse, and he's confronted by Time Traveler, who finds Ray to be worthy, to be a humble man who has the ability to achieve great things. And so Time Traveler chooses him to become a hero, the hero of the microverse and the hero of Earth, which we'll see more of next issue. Steve is just wrought with sadness and runs away, but runs right into the arms of the ManThing. And fortunately, Mary is there, and she blasts the ManThing. We get a great shot, somewhat echoing the cover. Again, that core of darkness to the composition. And Mary, blasts ManThing. Doesn't do a whole lot, but it does shake Steve out of his stupor and realize he'd better watch what he's doing. Steve, run! Bring the others! I can't, Mary. I'm scared. And that's bad news if you're encountering the ManThing, because as we all know, whatever knows fear burns at the ManThing's touch. And so, if you're feeling scared, ManThing is going to try to get his hands on you and set you on fire. ManThing is activated. The Micronauts fly into action. This is still a Marvel comic, so even the quiet issue where we're examining our thoughts, you got to have some action. So, ManThing is providing that. They fly into action. Acroyer's slashing at him, but finds that his blade just passes through. This monster's a pile of muck, and it smacks him away. It smacks him away next to a snake that is, a giant to Acroyer, and echoing what we saw on the cover of Acroyer being sort of stalked by this snake. Bug flies into action. He passes right through and gets swatted by the ManThing, and Bug is scared, so he's starting to smolder. Arctus Ran and Mary are in the mix. And then we get this really nice ad, sort of reiterating the cover, shrinking it a little bit, making it look even more, making the drawing look even tighter, and the composition more sort of mysterious and naturalistic. And it's also kind of nice. So you can see how they were trying to sort of pump up this comic, across the line. And of course, having a big crossover, pumping up both comics. And it also kind of serves a little bit of a story beat too, because we never get to see a Croyer's fight with the snake. So it's nice to get a little reiteration of just sort of the action going on. You could almost imagine the cover being placed as like another page in the story, getting more use. So this kind of does that in sort of like a subconscious way. And Steve makes a run to the Fanboat. I love a Fanboat, Fanboat fiction of this era. They're blasting away at the ManThing, but it's not having much effect because he is just like this unfeeling pile of muck. Biotron flies around in this helicopter, which is like a classic Micronauts toy, and gets sort of swatted down into the swamp. ManThing makes its way towards Steve because, Steve's the one who he most recognizes as having sort of human emotions, and that emotion of fear is acting as a beacon. And Steve's starting up that Fanboat. Kryptonite rocks, a Superman thing in a Marvel comic. And now the Fanboat's really blowing. Muffin's in there, the dog is in there with them, barking away. ManThing starts to feel something different from Steve. He senses, bravery, something that ManThing hasn't really experienced before, and is attracted to it, or maybe and makes his way towards Steve, or maybe he doesn't want to hurt Steve, but his impulses are sort of driving him that way, and so he allows himself to walk into the spinning blades of the Fanboat. It's a mystery we'll have to ponder, and the beast, this representation of death, this heavy sort of depression, this sort of shambling, laden, slow-moving character is now vanquished, and now we're released from that grip of depression and fear and sadness, and Steve's smiling away. Hostess fruit pie ad with a couple of characters from a classic Jack Kirby Fantastic Four comic. Another ad for the Fantastic Four Saturday morning cartoon that has no Human Torch in it, just Herbie the robot instead. We never get to see a Croyer's battle with that snake. We just see the result. The snake is vanquished. A Croyer's there. And the ManThing has reformed himself and skulks back into the swamp. But we get that sort of, post-credits, post-end credits stinger, this kind of surprise that gets you hooked for the next issue.
So this is Earth. What a pleasant world this will be to conquer.
What a pleasant world this will be for me to poop on. Next issue, then shall come a hero. Don't dare miss it. That's a great drawing, a great hook, a great way to use your sort of final panel to throw in a kind of surprising, threatening development. Now there is a human-sized Baron Karza at large on planet Earth. We get the letters columns. Letters columns are just really great for the Micronauts, and we get this profile with, I think, a self-portrait. I can barely make out the signature here, but I think it says Mantlo. So this is Bill Mantlo drawing a picture of himself. Next issue, they call him Captain Universe. You won't want to miss him. A really great issue coming up. In the letters column, somebody asks, how long can you sustain this war with Baron Karza? Al Milgram, who I assume as editor is answering these letters, he says, actually, we're planning to wrap up the Baron Karza war storyline with issue 12, and that that the whole team has tightly plotted out. Bill, Michael Golden, and Al Milgram have tightly plotted out what those next issues are going to be, what's going to be covered in the 12th. And I do think there's a ton of improv, and maybe when they very first started the first couple issues, maybe they didn't figure out every little bit of how the plot comes together, but you definitely feel a momentum and a feeling of things sort of coming together and following a plan and feeling like the narrative is in good hands. So it makes sense to me that there was some sort of multi-issue plan going on, even if maybe they didn't have the whole thing figured out at issue 1. I think by this point they've kind of figured out like what's the shape of the last couple issues, leading up to issue 12, so we can tie this thing up. And you see some like little hints and clues scattered throughout, starting with the previous issue that kind of pay off for some of the sort of twists and turns that happen in the final issues. Not every comic is made that way, but I think it really helps. And I try to do that as much as possible. And that was my goal when I was working on something like Transformers versus G.I. Joe, was to sort of have some kind of game plan, even if I didn't end up maybe doing every bit of that game plan, or maybe if I improvised other things, just going in there with this like larger game plan of how this thing is going to tie up. It is just extremely helpful, at the very least, for your morale while you're working on it, to feel to not feel so much like you're wandering through the woods in the dark, not knowing where to go. They have the whole thing sort of, they're basically telling you what's going to happen in the next bunch of issues. They say they're going to wrap up the war with Baron Karza by issue 12, and then after that they're going to have a 2-parter with Bug, a little solo Bug adventure on his world, which does come to pass, and then they're going to meet the Fantastic Four, which again also comes to pass. Michael Golden is not present for the Bug 2-parter or the Fantastic Four story, except with some really excellent covers that he draws. And his absence is missed. The book loses so much when Michael Golden departs. But we'll get to that when we get to it. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics. I Am Stan, a graphic biography of the legendary Stan Lee. And from Image Comics, Jack Kirby's Star Warriors, starring Adam Starr and the Solar Legion. And today is the final order cutoff date for Jack Kirby's Star Warriors. So if you'd like your local retailer to reserve a copy for you, let them know as soon as possible. I'll see you next time for Micronaut Monday.